Hey, I'm Sid Silver of the Lunachicks, and I'm a CGO.
Always saying guitars are playing a part of who we are. Got a cool job, but there's so much more to the chairman and women of the pedal board. You're a CGO, Chief Guitar Officer.
The show where success meets guitar.
Welcome to Chief Guitar Officer. I'm Scott Haidt.
And I'm Judd Silver. Scott, you could apply a punk rock DIY ethos to almost any aspect of life. Obviously, learning how to play an instrument, starting a band, but what about creating a restaurant?
Well, back in 1987, our guest and her gang of friends formed the influential New York punk band Lunachicks.
Yeah, in the same punk rock style, she went on to create the Roebling Tea Room, one of the earliest successful restaurants in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York, way before it was the Williamsburg Brooklyn that people know today. Scott, tell us who our guest is.
We're really excited to welcome the one and only Sid Squid Silver. And guess what? She's a CGO.
Entrepreneur, Williamsburg, Brooklyn pioneer, lunachick, and CGO, Sid Silver. Welcome to Chief Guitar Officer.
Hi, gentlemen.
Hey, Sid.
Hi, Sid. How are you?
Me? I'm great.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Greenpoint. I'm in my living room.
Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York, USA.
Yes. Born and raised. The suburb.
I know right now there's a documentary that came out that not too long ago, and it's making a debut in London in November.
The documentary, well, thanks for asking. I guess, well, it isn't officially out yet. I think it's screening. It had a New York screening during the industry screening week or whatever in New York. And now it's doing that in London, which is exciting because in a lot of ways, we really got our big start in the UK in the late 80s. So it's fun that it's going to have a screening there soon. The film came about sort of right about when we started talking about doing a book with a friend who is a rock writer, Jeanne Fury, who's a really great rock writer, music writer. A friend of ours who is like a filmmaker and a professional editor, like mostly for PBS, and does a lot of documentaries, she'd made her own films, Ilya Chaikin, but had never done a documentary herself, even though like her day job is editing documentaries. And she approached us. Maybe she found out that we were talking about doing a book, and she asked us if we would be interested in doing a documentary. And she also happens to have our guitar player went to college for 12 minutes, I think, maybe one semester before we were like, dude, we don't have time for you to go to school, man. We got to hit the road. We're like 17, 18. So we kind of coaxed her into quitting college, but she made a bunch of great friends before she quit college up at purpose. And Ilya was one of them. So she's sort of been in the fold from the beginning, which was really appealing for us because she was along for the ride since we really started the band. And so she had, been in the pit and been a part of the scenery throughout our career. So it was fun to have somebody that we really trusted work on the film. Because I guess, when you make a documentary on somebody else's dime, they have, it's their final cut, not yours. So it's, right. You're putting a lot of trust in somebody to let them tell the story of your life, essentially.
I know you mentioned the book. The book's Fallopian Rhapsody, which came out a couple years before. Did the book inform the documentary, or is it really done as a separate body of work?
They were separate bodies of work, but it's funny because a lot of the interviews that end up being in the documentary are us getting together for the first time after many years, because at that point we weren't active as a band, and it was more of an excuse for us to hang out and see each other and have snacks, which is, snacks are always involved no matter what we're doing. So we're like, are there snacks? Cool. And then it's us just, cracking each other up and telling a bunch of stories. But then Ilya came in to film some of the sessions of us, which is really where this conversation of playing again started, because it was not on our radar at all to play at that point. It was like a joke, but it wasn't anything we were taking seriously because we hadn't played at that point in 16 or 17 years as a band, even though we never officially broke up, because we never felt like we had to officially break up because we were all really good friends. We just sort of went on a very long hiatus into like, who knows, you never know sort of, status. And you really never know, folks, let me tell you, because then we ended up, getting back together and playing as a result, I think, of all these projects. And because really Ilya needed an ending for the film. So more than she's like, you guys think you're going to play? Like, I need an ending for this film. Wouldn't a reunion be really cool? And we were like, yeah.
Speaking of snacks.
Yes.
Could you take us through the transition of going from being a punk rock star of punk rock to becoming a punk rock star of the restaurant world?
Well, we toured for 12 years, I guess, right out of high school until we hit about 30. And then, a lot changed sort of in the music industry, and especially in the world of punk rock music during that time. And there, it's kind of like if you watch that Woodstock 99 documentary. It's funny because it wasn't until I watched it and I was trying not to throw up in my mouth during watching that documentary that I was like, oh, this is right when we decided to stop touring.
Wow.
Right? That was like 99, and we basically decided to stop touring in 2000. And if you think about kind of just the climate of this male-dominated, testosterone-driven moment in time that was like Kid Rock and Limp Bizkit were like the kings. And it was just like, I was like, no wonder we were over it at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, you have a bunch of women who have never really had regular jobs, who have basically been running a business that is your creative business. As a band, you're a business owner, right? Unless we were never signed to a major label. So we were always doing everything basically ourselves. And it's not surprising that not one of us ended up going out and getting a job at that point. And quite frankly, I had to question whether I was employable at that point in my life, because I didn't really have an education and I didn't think I could actually have a boss. I had been a professional tattoo artist during all those years that I was, when I wasn't on tour, but that's not really like having a boss. You're sort of an independent contractor and moving around to different studios or whatever. So I was like, I was really trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do? I wanted to lay some roots here. I was kind of sick of being on the road. I was thinking maybe I'd like to have a kid, and I didn't really want to leave New York, and it's not like the cheapest place to live. I don't know what happened. It was kind of like a weird fever dream where I was like, I kind of want to open a restaurant, and people were like, you're insane. That's really hard. And I think that was really because I was living in Williamsburg, and there was a couple of these really cool restaurants opening up at the very beginning of like the Williamsburg food scene.
And let's just highlight the very, very, very beginning, because we remember what that was like then, and it was not like it is now. If people know it, it's a very different world.
No. And there's like a very iconic restaurant, which is Diner, which is on South 5th Street in East, in the south side of Williamsburg. And I was living on South 4th Street, so I was one block away from there. And one of the cooks that was working there is a guy named Stephen Tanner, who's an amazing bass player. And he was playing in a band with my friend Tracy, who's a great guitar player and a great drummer. Tracy was in some local bands called The Wives. She actually played bass in Nashville Pussy for years. And she was like one of my besties. And she was like, I'm jamming with this guy Tanner, and he's a cook. He's, a really great cook. He works over at Diner. And then I made friends with him. And, it was just, there were so few things. I mean, the real truth of it is that I had to walk 12 blocks to get an iced coffee at that point in time. This is 2004. On the south side of Williamsburg. There was nothing there that wasn't like, Dominican deli with like green tomatoes, and, you couldn't find a vegetable or a cup of coffee. You had to literally walk all the way to Williamsburg.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Side, and then everybody would walk all the way back to the south side with their iced coffees. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I should open a coffee shop. So I had like a small idea to do that. And then whatever, one thing led to the next. I ended up renting this huge space. Like, it was in way over my head. Tanner, right at that moment on cue, told his boss to go fuck himself and was like, "Hey, Squid, you want me to cook some food in your place?" And I was just like, "Sure." So he like came over. So I thought it was opening a coffee shop. This lunatic comes in, just starts making food, like amazing food. And then I spent the next, 5-10 years just kind of running after this project and just, making it bigger and just trying to like sort of support the talent that I had in the kitchen. And, nobody knew that we didn't really have a kitchen. And it was a very organic, in so many ways, kind of like the band. It was like, let's go into the barn and like have a show. Like I wasn't that educated or clever or didn't really know what I was getting into. And kind of like how I learned how to play music. I just figured it out because I had a goal in mind that I wanted. And so it was sort of this organic explosion that happened there. And it was the right time for the neighborhood. And people really loved it. And it ended up being a huge, beautiful restaurant that really was like a community center of sorts for people in the neighborhood at a time when the neighborhood really needed it. And, it was just a cool bohemian creative act.
Yeah, the artist community, certainly gathered around it, and now cut to 20 plus years later, and the whole, you can't walk 3 steps without bumping into a place that was probably likely influenced by that.
Yeah, but now it's like, Sweet Green and Whole Foods and,
of course,
the Apple Store and, and now it's like even harder to do that because it's just become really corporate. It's just so expensive when things get super, it's like any neighborhood in New York. And I have to say, it's like a little bit of a pin in my ass of like, people that come here to New York and then start complaining about, the gentrification of New York. And I'm like, that's cool. It's only cool if it gets gentrified up to the point where you can live here. But then when you get priced out, it's not cool anymore. Because it's like before it was gentrified, you couldn't, walk down one block because, members of my band lived here in 1986 and like it wasn't cute. You couldn't get from the subway to your house without, getting chased or attacked.
So as far as like, the band experiences, all this work with the restaurant, which was just a huge part of Williamsburg. Tell us a little bit about ways that you tried through all your different things in giving back and helping others.
The band and the restaurant were sort of always involved, like where we could be in giving back. In many ways, I wish I could have done more on a larger level. I think, when you're running a small business, you're sort of scrambling all the time and, trying to make it all work. And you don't have like extensive resources and assistance where you're like, oh, Sophia, go do blah, blah. It's like you're doing everything, So, it's like I'm literally like, oh, yeah, there were plenty of times we sort of donated food to, things, but I honestly can't really remember what they were. The things that stand out to me the most are probably the relationships that I cultivated with people and a lot of young people that came to work for me. I felt sometimes like the Don in my office, although my office was like literally a broom closet under a staircase, not that cute, but there was always sort of like a rotation of like young people that worked for me and some that didn't work for me that would just come by to like talk and get advice or just be listened to. And I don't know, being a business owner is like, in some ways, you're like a therapist.
Right,
you're trying to have a culture that works inside of this universe that you're creating. So, it's always based in relationships. I don't care what anybody says. Your fish vendor, the person you buy your bread from, your bookkeeper, the people that, run your kitchen and run your floor. You have to have quality relationships with all of these people. You're not sitting in a van, but you're sitting in a restaurant. It's a lot of hours. So
absolutely. I know too, the band was a champion of women's rights too.
We did it where we could. And we actually came out of one of our sort of retirement periods to play in DC for Planned Parenthood, I believe, at a huge women's march for reproductive rights. And it's kind of crazy because it was, in high school, and since we all went to school together, of course, we were doing that together. Even before we had a band, we were getting on the buses and going out to DC to fight for our, reproductive rights. But I don't actually think anybody ever really thought that we would end up where we are right now. It was sort of unbelievable. yet any opportunity that we could, step into that role, certainly we wanted to. And also, I mean, I don't take any credit for this. I really give this credit to Theo because she's the lyricist and the lead singer of the band. But Lunachicks was really ahead of its time in terms of like message for like gay and trans rights. And, because we were the oddballs in a mostly male dominated genre of music, other oddballs really flocked to us. I don't think it's not really a coincidence, but there was a club in New York that we opened the first night of, which was Don Hill's Squeeze Box Party, right? Which was on the West Side. And that was really the first club where gay and punk became one thing, right? So previously you had a really male and testosterone sort of dominated hardcore scene at CB's, Sunday matinees, and gays were just like considered like, Broadway musicals. But there was like this whole faction of people that were queer that were like, we're into punk, that didn't even necessarily feel safe at certain types of venues. And so, Michael Schmidt, who's an amazing and really successful clothing designer and always has been, he started the club, and it was like such a great scene where every type of person from the music scene would meet, and there'd be like literally gay porn on the screens. And, and we like opened that with Joan Jett, and they told us it was the first ever internet live show that ever existed.
Really?
That's so very cool. That's amazing.
We're streaming you live on the internet. This has never been done before. And,
And you're like, what's the internet?
Exactly. But I mean, it was just a cool time. So I guess my point is that in a lot of ways, the Lunachicks were a beacon for people that didn't fit into certain boxes. And this is just way before this huge movement of other. But, it wasn't really that easy back then. And so I think it was a safe haven. And, to this day, we get communications from people like, you saved my life. I mean, you get from kids are like, and I'm sure like a lot of bands get this because I feel like music saved my life. Like I wouldn't have made it through school or really made it through anything. My group of friends, because I wasn't really close to my family, we all found each other through music. Right?
Yeah, let's go back to that a little bit. I mean, even before Lunachicks, take us through when you noticed that the bass or the guitar this is going to be really an impactful part of my life.
It's so not that story, right? I took guitar lessons because my parents were like, you should play an instrument. I think we got some cheap acoustic guitar. I learned like my 10 songs that I wanted to play. They were like Creedence and the Ramones and the Rolling Stones or whatever. Right. And then I asked my dad for an electric guitar and he said no. And so I typically, in my fashion, quit. And then I didn't really think about it for a long time until, we as a group of friends, and we were like, I don't know, when we were just in high school, we all had fake IDs. So we were all it was a lot easier to get into clubs and shows back then in New York. So you just like toss around your fake ID. And so we were regularly going to see the Ramones and the Cramps and, any, Dead Boys reunions and just whatever kind of punk shows we could get into, and also a lot of local bands. So we were going to shows, we were kids, and we made friends with people that were older than us, and they thought we were like, cute, like children showing up at the show. And they were like, you guys should start a band. Like, you're already like a band, you're like a gang. You should start a band.
Yeah.
And we're like, huh? And they're like, if you start a band, you can open for us. And we're like, really? And I think like up to that point, you think a band, Led Zeppelin, I could never do that. But then you have these people that that are booking local gigs in your town, which happens to be, New York. And they're like, yeah, you can open for us. So all of a sudden you're like, wait, it's this far away. Like, what do we have to do? How many songs do we need? 10 songs. And then you're like, can we write 10 songs? And then you're like, hey, you guys, let's write 10 songs. Like, we don't know how to play instruments. Well, the girl's like, I'll be the singer. And, this one's like,
how many chords do we need?
Exactly. Well, I got stuck with like bass or drums because two of our friends just owned guitars, couldn't really play them, but they had them. So they were like, I play guitar. I'm like, all right. And I was like, you want to play bass or drums? And I was just like, drums, like, nobody has a car, all the drummers were like from New Jersey or like Connecticut or Long Island. It's like, you need a basement and a car. or
Right.
a garage.
That's
And nobody
great.
does that in Brooklyn, in Park Slope,
Right.
seldom, except for the White Zombie drummer, because White Zombie, he used to live a few blocks from me, so they were practicing in his basement, whatever.
So great.
So I was like, bass drums are a lot. And I was like, well, I played 10 songs on guitar and that has 6 strings and the bass has 4. How hard could it be? But I think of this, I try to remember this like everywhere in my life because it's the simplest, it's like, child mind. You're like, well, if I could do that, I could do this. I mean, it's literally just like that, Well, if I can play 10 songs on a guitar, why can't I play bass? Sure, I can play bass. And so I think that's harder to do at this age. You're like, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. And then it's like when you were a kid and you were like, I don't know, like if I could run down, if I could run 2 blocks, I could run a marathon. Who cares, and you just do it. So
Right. Try learning a language or something like that. It's all those things. If you just do it as a kid.
we were just joking around, And so we wrote 10 songs and, look, you can just like practice that over and over and over again. You don't have to be able to play anything else. Just do what you got to do to get on stage. And actually was in acting school as a drama student at LaGuardia, which was performing arts. And the rest of my band were art students at the time. So, I was already like performing and, whatever. It was just, we were all artists anyway in art school. And we were just like, screw it. Why can't we do this? Did that. And then our friends let us open for them. And somebody recorded it and it's actually in the film, which is amazing.
Wow.
Like we have the first show we ever played. And
incredible.
we're terrible, but it's just fun that we have it.
I love that.
It really, and again, it really like is again about relationships, right? And actually it's really like, I'm trying not to start crying. My friend Howie Pyro, who passed away a couple of years ago, he actually got interviewed for the film because it was his band, The Freaks in New York. Howie was in a lot of bands over the years, and he was kind of like, a kid punk star when he was like literally, 14, 15 and, friends with like Sid Vicious and all the people. I mean, he's like a punk rock icon in that universe, but he was really the person who was like, you guys, you should form a band. And so we did.
I think we really want to see one of your basses.
You want to see my magic bass? Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so first of all, I never really cared about being a good bass player. I just wanted to be a cool bass player, right? So that's like Dee Dee Ramone, Paul Simonon, right? So, it has to be.
Oh, yeah.
It cannot be anything other.
Nothing less than.
The Cream.
Oh, yeah.
The Cream.
Beautiful.
So cool. Iconic.
Yes.
That's the one.
That's it.
It's not my first P bass. I had another great one, a blue one. And I don't know when they changed like whatever type of wood they were using. And I'm not like a guitar nerd enough to know what it is. But that bass weighed like 100 pounds.
Right.
And whatever, there was something wrong with the truss rod. We couldn't get it to tune properly. And like, you can only get half the neck perfectly in tune for recording. I don't remember what album it was. So at some point in time, I had to, up level and I found this baby. And this is a very early 70s.
Awesome bass.
Is that all original?
Everything except the badass bridge, which you're
Okay.
like jumping on top of this thing to keep it from moving too much. Yeah.
Keeping it in tune a little bit better.
Yes, because you're like hitting it way harder than any sensible person would because you're like really
Right.
excited and you're jumping all over the place. Once I got this bass, I never played anything else and I never will play anything else. I mean, this is like, you ever have a guitar where you're like, this thing plays itself? Like it's playing me.
Well, it's like part of your arm at that point. You're not
This
like,
thing is like, yes, this becomes like a limb. But also there's like, I don't know, there's something, some guitars are like, I can't explain this, like they're sort of like eating your energy where other guitars are like pushing it back. They're like, you know what I'm saying? There's
Yes.
something about the neck that is like, it's like springy or something. That's why I say like it plays itself. Like I can't really, I don't know what that is.
Like it's not fighting you. It's working with you.
Yeah. It's like when you're jumping on a trampoline, like you're not just jumping off the floor. Like it's giving you flight. I don't know how else to describe that. That's
no, that's very well put.
And Sid, related to that, you still playing through the SVTs?
Only such an idiot. I'm sure there's something out there that sounds even better that is smaller than my refrigerator, but I could show you that thing. I mean, it looks as though it has been dragged around the world because it has been.
So Sid, the documentary, November 10th, correct? In London.
There's a couple screenings, yeah.
Where do people hear more about what's going on with you? Is there a website, social media?
We do have a website, and Lunachicks Official is on Facebook and Instagram, and Theo, my lovely singer, caretakes it. But the film, again, is still in the, it hasn't had an official premiere yet, so still screenings, and then we have some really great representation for the film, and it's gotten really been warmly embraced by the people that were representing us and representing Ilya. So it will get sold hopefully this year, and then it will be on there'll be some easy way to see it. There's no real easy way to see it right now except flying to England, which is,
hey, it might be worth it.
Unless you happen to live there. But it will be easier to see pretty soon. And
all right. We'll be looking for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sid, thank you so much for being on. You've been a terrific guest.
Great seeing you, Sid.
Great to see you too.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Check us out on all the socials at Chief Guitar Officer.
And we want you on the show. Go to chiefguitarofficer.com, look for the section called You're a CGO, send us your video, and be featured on a future episode. Just like this.
Hey, I'm Cliff. I'm here at Replay Guitar Exchange. This is our Gibson Victory, and I am a Chief Guitar Officer.